Today, I'm going to be talking about Ran by Akira Kurosawa. This was made in 1985. I watched this, I fell in love with it, and I watched a bunch of different things about it. One of the things that people always brought up is how it's an adaptation of King Lear. And what a lot of people don't really get, and I think, is that it was actually originally a different adaptation, but he was like making it, but he wanted it to be where like the people end up working against him, like his sons. And then he found out about King Lear, and so he pretty much accidentally made a King Lear adaptation. So then he went further into King Lear. And what I really like about his adaptation is how he simplified a lot of the different characters and merged them all. I feel like it worked very, very well, making sure that all the characters, I don't know, they felt way more alive. I watched like a little bit about King Lear and it felt a bit much, but having it all like kind of condensed like this, I think definitely helped, at least for the screen. Also, in the creation of this, couldn't really get much funding, so he has a bunch of funding from all over, including like Coppola and Stanley Kubrick helped him get funding. And during the creation of this, his wife died, some of his close co-workers and friends have died. You can definitely tell in the movie that death is a very prominent thing, and you could tell that was definitely on his mind during that time, which I think it makes the story compelling, seeing how his whole life up to that moment and how it's kind of shaped how he views. It's definitely a reflection of how he feels at the time. I think even Lord Hidatora, I think, definitely represents him in a lot of ways. I think they're even like similar in age. One thing that also everybody talks about is the visuals of the movie. It's so pretty. It's so well done. I wouldn't say I don't know if it's necessarily, for me personally, like my favorite visual movie. I don't really know what that would be, but this one has a lot of great shots and a lot of great colors, and part of that is because I was looking at some of the storyboards that he did, and he was a painter before, and so all the storyboards are painted. I tried referencing that in the piece. The scarecrow, like the face of the scarecrow is how he painted Lord Hedora in the storyboard. So I tried having that be like the face of the scarecrow. I also really liked all the clouds that he has in the film. It's very pretty. It makes it, I don't really know what they necessarily represent off the top of my head, besides just how things happen and people can't control it. One thing that I thought was also really cool is this, like how he would silhouette people onto the sky. So if there was like a hill or something, he would place it low, I'm pretty sure. So when they're coming over the hill, they're walking from the sky, which I think that it was just very exciting and very cool to see. I don't really know what it represents, but it was just strong visual. You get to see the silhouette, you get to tell what the actors are doing. It's a very good way to see what's going on. One thing that when I was watching it the first time, I was kind of confused on what the film was trying to say. And I watched it with a friend and we were talking about it. It seemed that the film was kind of trying to say that you should be selfish. Gyro and Toro, they both were going after power, but Saburo was the only one that worked alone. They both worked with, Toro worked with his wife, Joro worked with Toro's wife, and his general Shuri. So it was kind of confusing like that, where it's like they both work with people to try and do this, but Saburo is alone doing it and he doesn't take orders or work with people. Very confusing. But then the second watched, it clocked me that I at least what I believe, it's about the pursuit of power, which makes way more sense with everything that they talk about. Everybody has a relation with power. Gyro, Shiori, his general, and Taro, all of them, and Lady Cassidy, they're all pushing towards power. At least Gyro was specifically going for power. Same with Taro, and I guess Cassidy was on a revenge thing, but they all wanted power, so they worked with her. And I think that's very interesting how, just showing that and whatnot. And I think it's very cool how, I wish it kind of showed it a bit more with Saburo, because his whole thing at the beginning was that him and his brothers can't work together because they all want power. But maybe it's because he isn't working together. He got power, but in a good way. I don't really know. Maybe I don't think I'm smart enough to make that connection right now. Yeah, all the characters has just a different relationship with power. I just, it's so cool, the connection for that. How Hidatora still wanted all the power but didn't want to do any of the work, and Taro wanted all the power and all the everything, so he banished Hidatora. Hidatora, upset that he's not getting his power, goes to Jiro, who Jiro also wants power, and so he gets kicked out again. Then other general, like Hidatora's generals, betray him because Jiro and Taru wants power, and so they try killing him and whatnot. Then Tatsumaru and Lady Sue, who are both don't want power. Tatsumaru is blinded by the pursuit of power by Hidatora, and Lady Sue is killed by Jiro in the pursuit of power, or more so in the misleading of absolute power, things that he can just kill on a whim, which is what his general was going against, but he sent another person to go kill it, which I didn't pick up on that at the first watch. And I think it's interesting how, like, a part of the thing is how people have a hard time choosing peace. Taro and Jiro and Lord Hidatora, they all went to war and they were all fighting for war. Same with Saburo, but couldn't get what they wanted. They all, like, Hidatora did all this war conquering and then tried doing peace and trying to do it with no consequences, and so he died. Jiro wanted power, which is not there's I think what part of it is that power is not peaceful. Like, there's no inherent peace in power, and so Jiro dies. Taru also dies because of that. All the people who don't die, besides like the soldiers and whatnot, they all represent, I feel like, people who choose peace and love. Like Kayomi, the jester, could only help. He wanted to try and abandon Hidatora, but even though he was mad and whatnot, he couldn't. He just could help him. That's his thing. Same thing with servant guy leader. He tells him his job is to tell Hidatora how it is. I'm pretty sure. At least that's what he said at the beginning, but when he got banished for protecting Saburo. And he's just loyal to Lord Hidatora. And the only person who chose peace and was absolute peace was Lady Sue, and she died. But she, even in her death, she protected Tatsumaru, her brother, with the Buddha scroll, which I think is kind of helps show how peace still, even if killed, can breathe more peace, while power just kills. Like, all the people who want for power has died, but peace helps save someone, yeah, I guess that's it. How power kills, but peace saves. So in the end, power could kill all, while peace will probably at least save someone. Maybe I'm not putting that in the right words, but my brain that just clicked. I think Sue and the brother, so this is the part of the thing that really intrigued me about this film, was the ending with Sue and her brother Tatsumaru, how he just stands there on the edge of a cliff. And I think that means a lot of things. One of the things that came to my mind is how Tatsumaru represents us as just everyday people, and Lord Hidatora gave him a kind, quote-unquote kind gesture or mercy by blinding him, because what he saw as a typical thing is just burning down his castle and killing everybody. So he saw that as a kind gesture to blind him. I think that's interesting on how we can, if we see that as us, there's plenty of things that obviously we can get to, like governments and whatnot that have done to us, but also just other people who have manipulated or hurt us, and they show it as a kind gesture, like beating you up and saying that they're just training you to how to deal with bullies. Towards like, okay, I don't think you need to beat me up to do that, Sue kind of represents, again, the good, and I think just peace in general, to where these lords and these people, they don't save us. They can't, but another kind person can save us. And yeah, we're stranded and alone, but if we choose kindness, we can at least save someone else, I think. Like, I feel like for me, what I saw the ending was like how he was just there by himself and how he was saved by Buddha. I saw that as a happy ending, just because to me that came off more so as peace saving him, and how he's still alive. Yeah, he's up there on a cliff, but he didn't walk off of it. Blind people aren't stupid. They know how to navigate. He knows not to walk off a cliff. The only the only reason why it seemed kind of scary was because it spooked him, but again, it's like he knows how to navigate. So it's not like at least for me, it's like he's not stuck up there. He can get down, he can go wherever. It's just that he accidentally almost walked off the cliff. But I think the Buddha being there, saving him, shows that we continue going forward. It's the power, it's the death. But if we choose peace, we can get down and we can walk away from this cliff. Like we can save ourselves. I hope that makes sense. At least that's how I view it in my head. I don't see it as like sad, like, oh, we're alone. I see it as a choice to continue moving forward with this power pursuit, or we realize that we need peace, and so we step away from it, the doom. What I like about this film so much is the characters. They're like, my favorite is Kayomi. No, my favorite is Kayomi and Lady Kasade. Kasade, at least I think I'm saying it right. She is the lady who tricked Tauro and Gyro to pretty much just kill each other and to try and destroy the family. Those two are my favorite. Kayomi because, more so just in my head, I really like Kayomi, and because he makes me think a lot. Not only just with all the fact that he pretty much just has crazy bars, because it's interesting to see how Hidatora treats him. Kayomi was with Hidatora his entire life, helping him, which is almost, it's interesting because Kayomi is almost like Hidatora's son, but never like established, which is really interesting, which kind of reminds me of how in King Lear, there's the dad with the illegitimate son. And that kind of reminds me of Kayomi, how he's been there, like he's been with this dude his entire life, but Hidatora just sees him as a jester while he's there to help him and nurse him and love him. And I feel like he loves Hidatora like I feel like he loves his father. You don't see him ever interact with any other family. It doesn't seem like he has anyone else. It seems like that this is his family. And it's interesting how Hidatora just doesn't see it. And I think almost the film kind of doesn't see it. Like that's like one thing I don't necessarily like. I want more respect for Kayomi a lot, and so that's one thing I don't really necessarily vibe with the movie. I feel like Kayomi needs more, but he was kind of annoying at times, but I think that's just more so just like just kind of how he needs to act in that and whatever to be this gesture. But I really mess with him. He's very funny. He's very just based. He spits facts. He's my favorite. And Lady Cassidy, again, the woman who was on her like revenge stuff, is very compelling to me because she pretty much lived for them all to die type of thing. Like that was her whole thing. It worked. It worked because no one saw her as her. She was telling her husband her family was murdered in that castle, and it seemed like he didn't know. I'm pretty sure he mentioned how he didn't know, which is crazy that that's your wife. And it seems like he didn't really pursue anything after that, which I think is interesting how he doesn't know anything about her. And the only time he I think really cares for what she has to say is when it's about him with power. She mentions about how he's just in the shadow, and he's like, yeah, no, that's true. But it's like, you don't care for anything else about her. Same thing with Gyro. I feel like it was very surface level, just like they talked about it earlier about how he should steal her, and I think just because she's beautiful and how I don't think there's really any like power thing other than that, and that's how he kind of sees her type of thing. It's just this illustrious woman, but it's like, no, she is like very like hurt. She's a very hurt person, watching your mom commit suicide and whatnot, and now you're with the family that caused that is kind of crazy. And these dudes just in their pursuit of power just didn't care. They just don't care for human connection, I feel like. And so it's easy for her to manipulate them because of that, because if she puts whatever in the way of pursuit power, they'll do it. Like, if you kill your wife and make me your wife, I won't make you lose power. Or somehow, I forgot if she made it seem like she will gain power or he'll gain power from it. I don't really know, but stuff like that is just kind of like wild, that they just don't care, and they just kind of in a way kill willy-nilly because of that. And I don't know, she's just like, her acting and her whole story I feel like is very, very cool, and so that's why she's one of my favorites as well. Lord Hidatoro, I really like him. And one thing that was interesting at the beginning is that he didn't see consequences. He didn't see that he had any reason for consequences. And so the reason why I say it like that is because when Saburo tells Hidatoro about how his brothers are people of this war, that they can't choose peace because they don't know it. They have no idea what that is. They just know war. And part of that is because Hidatoro never taught them. He's just pushing it onto them so he can have this moral ground and be lazy, pretty much, and not do anything but have all the power. And he's just upfront with him about that. But Hidatora banishes him, I feel like, because of the fact that he can't see that he has consequences for his actions. And he starts to realize that more and more after he gets banished, and that's why he goes up to Lady Sue and tells her to hate him, and she doesn't. And so it's like this person, now he wants consequences for his actions. He's realizing what he's done. He realized that, okay, maybe Saburo was right, and Lady Sue, I've hurt you in so many different ways. You should be angry at me. Please be angry at me. And she isn't. And that frustrates him because now he wants some consequences. I feel like more so because of his choosing, and he's not getting it. So he just kind of becomes frustrated in that, seeing how his kids that he put in power are doing exactly what Saburo said and warned him about. I think he starts to see them as like, oh, they're bad. But then I think what happens when he's in the castle when they're burning is that he realizes what he's made. Yes, he has all this land. He's connected all this land, but he's also done it through a pursuit of power. And again, power just kills. It's not peace. And so everybody that's with him is used to that. Everybody has that intent almost. And so, except Kayomi and the guy who is Tango. He is the guy that represents loyalty as well. He's very similar to Kayomi in that way, that they stick with King Hidatora. But yeah, so all these people that he has, they all choose power because that's for like 50 years, that's all that they're used to, is just murder. And that kind of snaps him. He kind of realizes that it's all his doing. And that kind of snaps him. He doesn't want to deal with it, so he kind of escapes in his brain and becomes crazy. And then he's wandering around, in this state of trying to avoid what he's done. He wakes up and he is in the castle that he's burned down. And he sees Lady Sue and Tatsumaru. This is their castle. He burned it down. He gouged out her eyes and he made her marry into his family. He sees all the horrors that he's done. And he knows that it's not just this place. He's done it many times and it scares him. And so he runs away because he sees the consequences of his actions. He knows that it's not as easy as just telling someone to be mad at him. It's realizing that everything that he's done has these consequences, that he can't just choose peace now afterwards. It's something that he's made. And I think it's interesting that now he sees the beauty in peace, at least he knows that it's good. And so seeing all the stuff that it recontextualizes all the stuff that he's done, because he didn't really he's kind of saw it as oh, this was a route to peace, but now he's just seeing that okay, but also I've done so much bad to try and make this good. And that scares him, so he runs away. And then he meets up with Saburo. He's all happy again. And then his son gets murdered. And that finally just takes him out. That he's that was too much for him, and so he died. Yeah, and also when he dies, Kaiomi is so torn up. Because that's pretty much his dad, which I think is kind of crazy that I feel like is not touched on that. That's pretty much his dad. And Lord Hidatoro just kind of collects him the entire time. I don't know. Anyways. Or at least doesn't see him as like that. But I really fuck with Lord Hidatoro a lot because of that whole, at least that's how I view his character. And I think that was very cool and very interesting to see how he navigates with that world, where he chooses what he wants and then he realizes that everything, he can't just pick and choose. Saburo was interesting too, just because how it's interesting how it shows that he's not just this super kind dude. He's just blunt. He's just truthful with it. He can say everything that he says way better and way nicer and kinder. But that's not really painted poorly, because that's not the point of it. The point is peace or power, and it's still a way of peace. It's just there's better ways to do it, but he's not trying to do it smoothly. He's just trying to be real, and so telling what's up. And I think that was very interesting. one thing I did not like, this was one of the things I didn't like about the film, was how he suddenly became very mature and very just not blunt at the end, which like is a crazy switch up, I feel like, for him to go through, especially just like off screen. It would be nice to see like maybe a little bit, but we didn't see anything, you know, so it's kind of hard to believe that he goes from, if you watch the beginning, he's like slumped and everything. He's like, his body language is so on point of just not giving any shits. But then Sabaru at the end is so mature and so just kind of welcoming with his words, which I think is kind of bullshit, not gonna lie. I think he should have just stayed the same relatively, because I think that gives a good grounding point to where he, like, in this crazy world, everybody says that Ron it also is a translation of chaos and whatnot, which kind of makes sense. Like, this whole thing is crazy, but he went away, and it would be interesting to have him still be the same, because then it's like wow, everything, look at all the stuff that's happened, you know. Does that make sense? I don't know. I'm not the goat, so I take my words with a grain of salt. Tatsumaro, who is the brother of Lady Suit, who's also he's blind. He's also a very interesting character. Just how everything is. That, like, in the painting, I tried to, like, I have it so it goes the crow, the gourd, and then the scarecrow, and then him, because them being behind the scarecrow to me represents that, like, yeah, Lord Hidatoro is not really accomplishing his job well, but he still chose peace and whatnot. Like, the events that he chose kind of represents at least Lady Sue, which I feel like protects him from that, and that's why he's in front, he's alive and still moving forward, while the crow, which represents Gyro, and the gourd, which represents Toro, they're just all kind of tussling, I feel like, back there. And so I feel like it kind of, I don't know, I think it kind of shows that they're in this pursuit of power, but his act of at least trying to be peaceful led to, like, it led to a lot of death. He definitely should have done it a better way, but Tatsumaru is still alive. He's a very interesting character, especially because of the ending. It places him in so many different, like, theories to, like, what he could represent, which I know it's always hard to, like, have a character represent something, because you also want them to be human, you know. They want them to be multifaceted, but I mean, having him at the end like that, and like such like almost like a very mystical moment, it's very hard to not have him to try and represent something. I feel like he kind of represents either just normal people or the working class, but it's hard. I very much like him. Also, with Sabaru, Gyro, and Taru, I tried having their colors represented in flowers in the field. I tried finding different red flowers that mean like greed type of thing, and yellow flowers that is trying to be, I forget what the yellow one is, more so trying to, you know, take more, like not in a greed, like different way, because Gyro really was kind of more so envy. I think more so envy, like he was very envious. He wanted, since he was in the middle, he wanted to be Taru, and he wanted that. Well, Taru wanted to be his own and have his own power that represents him. I don't know if maybe I'm not explaining that right, but I tried finding flowers that kind of represent that, and a blue flower that just represents truth and loyalty. So I don't know the names of the flowers at the top of my head, but they all have that representation, and the blue is more prominent in the front because of Sabaru, like, I feel like, withstanding and whatnot. So it has a bolder presence in the front, while the other ones are in the back, because this one is also staying true, if that makes sense. But yeah, Gyro, I also think is interesting because of that, his complex with not wanting to be seen as lesser because he's younger, you know. I think that's interesting. While Taro just wants to be seen as his own, Gyro wants to be seen as not someone less than. You know, I guess, okay, so Taro wants to be seen as more, while Gyro doesn't want to be seen as less than, which is pretty much the exact same thing, but just like saying them differently in my head makes them seem different. I don't know if that makes sense. It's the same. They both want power, but in different ways. I hope that makes sense. Lady Sue represents peace, Buddha, the whole thing. She wasn't really given too much time to fully develop, besides being someone who's super in tune and in touch with their state and who they are, and that leads into them helping Tatsumaru, who needs help. They've been hurt by those around them, and because of that help that they gave, he's still alive. Shori, the general for Gyro, I think it's also very interesting because him and Lady Casade really had this pursuit of power that I think is interesting. I guess Casade, again, didn't really want it, but he wanted power, and so he helped Gyro get power. I guess it was like an interesting like situation to where like he's not good, he's just this thing of power. I don't know how to really describe him. He's very interesting on how he helps Gyro, but because I don't know, I feel like I had a really good idea for what Tango represented, and I feel like it's escaping me right now. It's interesting again how he says that he served Gyro and not Lady Casade. I think it's interesting and how he's the one to cut her down. He was very much the person that kept Gyro on the pursuit of power. He definitely like leaned a little bit by letting Lord Hitodora live, his father, but Shuri is more focused on that. He also has his own morals, which I think is good. Like he doesn't think that you should just kill willy-nilly. He thinks that you should have this pursuit of power, but you shouldn't just kill off a whim. And he can tell that Lady Casady is leaning him away from this pursuit of power into using him, which I think is interesting, where he's trying to prevent Gyro from not pursuing power, if that makes sense. Lady Casady is trying to make Gyro a pawn almost. I don't know if that made sense. I mess with him a lot. Solid B tier. Tango, I mentioned him briefly earlier about how he represents loyalty. I mess with him a lot too. He didn't really get too much characteristic also, but he's tough. He has some badass sayings like how Lord Hitotoro being mad saved him, which is true. But also kinda, I don't know. I don't really have the mental fortitude to break that down right now. You know what? I will. At least how I view that saying that it made it like him being mad saved him is not only just because Lord Gyro didn't kill him because he saw that he was mad. Lord Gyro, I don't know if it's Lord Gyro, but anyways, his son spared him because he was mad, but also because it allowed him to kind of escape from it. But again, he does die later, so it's hard to say that he actually was saved because of it, you know. I think it was just more so a solid comeback though. Like, yeah, he's still alive. Well, you guys are gonna die because you guys had this pursuit of power. I don't know. Actually, I take that back. I don't think I really broke that down, and I do not have the brain power to do that right now. Taro, he also didn't get much characterization besides the fact that he wants to be very much his own since he is the oldest. He wants to be very independent, and having his dad still there and put him in the shadow, like he wants the representation of what he's doing, which I think is very interesting, and how Lady Casade kind of brought him to that. I feel like without Lady Casade, it would have probably been fine, but I feel like that spiked this pursuit of power. And just the characterization that, like, yeah, he doesn't know anything about Lady Casade. He just doesn't really care, even though that they are married, which I think is showing about how it's not like she started it. Like, I feel like he already had that pursuit in them, and so like, why would he care? I think him getting killed was a crazy scene. I was not expecting that. And then the last but not least, I think they were the uncles, like they were in black and white, I'm pretty sure, in the beginning, and they were the ones that helped Saburo. I don't really know fully what they represent because they're also safe and fine. They were just like these outside forces type of thing. I don't really know. I don't really know too much about them or like what they would represent in this whole pursuit of power thing, because they also have power. I think they went along with like this pursuit of peace thing, and maybe that's why they seem kind of like otherworldly and whatnot, is because they saw what Saburo represented and whatnot. And so I feel like they definitely helped him become a better person by taking him in and whatnot, and being like, you say these very good things, but you need to know how to say these things, I guess. I don't know too much about them, but I very much like this movie a lot. I thought it was super, super just interesting. I really liked watching Strangelove, for example, and recently I watched Kill Bill, but this movie really just, there was so much, I feel like, philosophy in it that really got me hooked and like talking with people about it. The lines that Kayomi like said are like very, very cool. Like the scarecrow line where Lord Hitodora is just this scarecrow in a field. He's just a symbol. The hollow gourd, where I feel like that represents Taro just not having guts or anything. He's just there, floating. All the stuff that he would say about like the bird chooses or maybe it was the snake. I think it was the snake chooses the spotted eggs or something like that. Some animal chose the spotted eggs instead of the bird. Okay. The bird chose the white eggs of the snake and neglected its spotted eggs, and then the snake ate it, which is just like it was very much just about how Lord Hinatoro had this just incorrect read on his sons, where it's like, yeah, they look so pure and whatnot, like that's good, but that's just surface level. You don't know your own sons, because you were this warlord. Like, they all were very hesitant when you were starting to be lovey-dovey, because you've been a warlord this entire time. You just live and breathe war. And so, yeah, Summer's gonna be like, dog, what? What are you doing? And I think that's very interesting on how it can also be seen as just like a bad father type of thing. But yeah, Akira Kurosawa made a great film. Obviously, he's one of the GOATs. And I will definitely be watching more of his stuff in the future. His whole life is very interesting, and how a lot of them are how he's feeling in that time. And I think that's very, very cool. Sorry if I mispronounced any of the names.